what are some of the things that you've used throughout the course of your marriage and in your relationships that have really helped you, use conflict as a way, as a mechanism for growth?
There's several different tools that I use that I have developed over time. My favorite and most used is what I also train my clients in litigation is let your breath be the first word that you say. So you think of your breath as where a word would be, you just put a breath and you lead with that in your sentence. So if somebody is going to say something that's going to make you defensive, instead of going, I didn't say that, that's not what I said, and you immediately just boom, 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 you've now ratcheted up 5 levels. Instead, when you have a breath where they say something ugly and I did not say that. Now you have way more control. Now you have a much more firmer grasp. So that helps you control yourself. Another tool or thought that I allow myself to use is I just picture words that are not helpful. I just let them fall to the ground. You picture as their words coming out. If they're not helpful, they just fall. We have this fear that we have to catch every single thing that somebody says, as if it's tennis. We have to hit it right back. It's baseball. We got to catch it. We got to swing. Some pitches are balls. Not everything is a strike. And so if you're just swinging at every pitch that's thrown, it's going to tire you out. It's going to frustrate you. It's going to frustrate the other person. And you're going to hit a foul, if we're going to go with the baseball metaphor here. And so when you have the ability to understand, just because you said something does not mean I have to say something. Not everything you said deserves a response. You don't have to attend every argument that you're invited to. There is a wisdom and a peace and a comfort and a confidence that comes with knowing I don't have to say anything that I don't want to say. And often that gives you an immense sense of confidence going into the conflict.
I know you're a big fan of Chris Voss as well. He's been on the podcast, or he talks a lot about tactical empathy. I know you're a fan of that as well. For people who aren't as familiar, with that term, maybe they didn't catch that episode. Why do you think that's so effective when trying to dissolve not only just conflict, but to bridge relationships closer together?
Well, I know Chris could explain it better than me, but what I understand tactical empathy to be is really informative empathy. Let's say it that way. By understanding the other person's struggle, by being who you are as a human, it makes you easier to relate to them and be curious to create that connection. So if he uses that a lot by labeling and by mirroring. So if you were to say something to me and I don't know, let me come up with a sentence. If somebody says, you always talk that way to me when we're in front of people, I could respond with, in front of people? Yeah, in front of people. And they will give you a whole nother paragraph. And then you do it again. And you continue to listen. And while you're listening, you are having that empathy of, that must not feel great. No, it doesn't feel great. And they keep on talking to you. And you go, I bet that probably makes you feel bad. Like if I were you, I'd feel rough about that. I apologize. And they'll use that. You use it as a way to continue to roll with it. But the word tactical is really, I think, just kind of a sexy word for it. But to me, it's a way that somebody's feeling informs you of the empathy that you can use in that given situation.
Right. Because at the end of the day, I feel like when people are in some sort of argument, the other person just wants to be felt and heard. They
just want acknowledgement. That's mostly it. You don't even, as long as you acknowledge somebody, you don't have to agree with them. Agreement is typically not what they want. They just want to feel like you understood them.
I think one of the biggest problems with some of this stuff that we're recently talking about is people want to feel like they're respecting themselves and they're standing up for themselves and they're not letting people walk all over them in conversation. And some of the stuff that we've been talking about over the last few minutes is really how to make the other person feel heard, how to not pour gasoline on the existing fire with our words. In the context of speaking with authority and conviction and standing up for yourself to somebody, what have you found to be an effective way to do so without being disrespectful?
Well, I see two sides of that question. There is what we just talked about, the person's desire to feel acknowledged, to feel heard. And you can do that with phrases like, that's helpful for me to know. I've learned that X is important to you, or I understand that this is important to you. And you can lower their barrier that way. But to continue to stand up for you, there's got to be a boundary. There's a lot of, I'm going to use the word peace, that in clarity that comes with putting a frame around your life and around the conversation. That means you are focusing what is in it and excluding what is not. Just like you would put a frame around a piece of art, you are enhancing what's inside it. So if you want to put up a boundary with somebody's pushing your buttons, you need to say no, you need to stand up for it. You're using assertive language. So what I like to give it for people is you're giving them a manual rather than giving them a remote. So instead of letting them control your behavior by pushing all your buttons, you're telling them, I don't accept the way you talk to me. So there's a difference in saying, you can't talk to me that way. I don't allow people to speak to me that way. So, or even stronger, somebody says, you can't speak to me that way. I don't respond to that. Like, it's just this shift of this reactive versus responding in a way that keeps you grounded by having a boundary of what's important to you and how you're going to speak and how you're going to assert yourself in the conversation.
So in real time, if you and I, let's just pretend we're actually having coffee right now,
Oh yeah, coffee sounds good. I need some.
and you say something to me about something, and I go, that sounds really stupid of you. What would be instead of you, what would be like the real time like response to me in that situation?
So there's two that come to mind. Um, let's assume that we are friends, that we know each other, we're good. My immediate reaction would be, was that meant to be hurtful, or were you just being funny? Get that to clarify. I'm giving them that grace of, I know you didn't mean to insult me. Now, if we're not friends, I'm gonna let that linger, give it 5 seconds of quiet, and then repeat what you just said, or ask you to repeat what you just said. So if you said something, and for example, if I just had quiet, I could say, so that sounds stupid to you. All I'm doing is repeating it. And then they'll go, well, what I meant was blah, 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 blah. So, but what you're doing is saying, hey, I'm standing here. I'm standing right here. And I'm not moving. So understand, if I don't like something, I will push it back, rather than me continue to carry your words and me feel less and less and less of myself.
So we talked about like how like the biggest asset you can have is using your breath and practicing the pause before saying anything in the midst of high conflict situations or conversations like we just went over. Is the opposite also true? Because you hear a lot of people, and I've definitely been guilty of this, is like the tick for tack. Like somebody says something to you and then you try to one up with them with something else, and it's just this never ending battle to the bottom, right?
Right. Yeah, it's a race to the bottom is exactly what it is. Yeah.
Is that the biggest mistake you see people make, is just this tick for tack approach when they're
Yeah. It's this perception that you have to win the argument, when my advice is always never win the argument. That winning an argument is not a thing. If you win an argument, you've won contempt. You've won regret. You've won resentment. It's a lose-lose game. What you've really lost is that person's respect. You might have lost the relationship, the connection that you once had, because you thought that saying that hurtful thing was going to make you win. It was going to end the conversation. Like in a negotiation, the advice is the person who speaks loses, right? Well, in a relationship you want to build, it's typically the person who speaks last loses, because you went too far. I mean, you ratchet. So as soon as, let's say you said something to me, Doug, that was at a louder tone, If I go louder than you, in my mind, I'm winning. I need to beat you. Well, I've now just done two things. I've justified your ability to go even louder. I've also just confirmed every fear that you had about me. I've now confirmed every thought you had. I am rude. I am ugly because I haven't denied it. I've just given you all the tools and resources to feel even more afraid. So I am, it's like, it doesn't make sense to me that how would you respond to a threat with a bigger threat? Often that does not create connection with the other person. It doesn't. It just makes them not like you more. So that's kind of the advice that I always fall back to, is that if you win an argument, your priorities are in the wrong place. It is a race to the bottom. Whenever you just ratchet it, eventually it hits a tipping point. The sympathetic turns into the parasympathetic. The ratchet, the fight or flight, you fought too hard. You threw that very hurtful word. And now it's the cooling point where you feel regret, you feel dread, you feel sad, and you go, I just feel bad about the whole thing. And then you focus on what matters, but you should have done it in reverse.
Yeah, there's nothing that drives somebody more nuts, like in the midst of a high conflict conversation, is when the other person says like nothing, and they kind of walk away, and it really drives that. I can't believe they're not reacting and responding
Yeah.
to how I am, right? And it's like sometimes when you send like a hurtful text, and the other person
Right.
just doesn't respond, you just send more and more
Yeah.
and more,
It's
trying to
killer.
get somebody to
Yeah,
answer.
because you
Like,
wanted that dopamine, right? You
Right.
wanted that yes, they are fighting back with me.
And you feel
But it's awful.
powerless now because you feel like that person has gained authority over you because they're not giving in to
Exactly.
what you want. Like, why are we so driven to not walk away from arguments, even though deep down we know that that's how we gain respect, authority, value through somebody else's eyes, is by knowing when to walk away.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what's worth your time? And exactly right. You can shoot that text that you thought was a zinger, right? You thought you just sent that zinger of a text, and then they don't respond to it. And all of a sudden, when 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes go by, it feels less and less like a zinger and more like you're wearing, the dummy hat of like, why did I send that? This doesn't make, and now you're frustrated. Now you realize, oh, they just have full control over my emotions. Now I feel like I'm not anywhere where I need to be. Meanwhile, they look like they're calm, cool, and the bigger person.
And do you think that's like an ego thing, that like people, their ego gets in the way, their self-esteem gets in the way, and that's why they feel they just can't walk away, and they feel that if they're not winning this argument or being quote unquote right, that it's just a reflection of how they feel about themselves?
That's part of it. I think it's part of a bigger picture. It has a lot to do with your upbringing, I think, and just what you saw as conflict. It's some people, I grew up in homes like my house. My parents didn't really argue in front of us. They went in another room, if they needed to have some words. There are other people who had it all out right there in the open. Didn't matter where they were. It could be at a restaurant. It could be at the house. It could be in front of other kids. So conflict looks different to other people. And some people have grown up in that very toxic argument behavior where they do say the terrible things, where they understand the really bad arguments as a process of feelings or to get it out. And so it's relative really to how they grew up. So ego is part of it, but a lot I think too is what they learned and imitated to see as their measure of this is how to handle conflict. They weren't taught or equipped better ways.
What do you think gets in the way of that? Is it when somebody wasn't raised in a way that modeled healthy conflict, they get into conflicts as adults? A lot of times there's physical symptoms that come along with the conflict because you're in fight or flight mode. Do you think that is harder for people to deal with, or is it the lack of understanding on healthy conversation tactics in the midst of something like that?
Well, I think the behavior is learned. I mean, I don't think we're born we're born to say no, to not like, I got 2 kids. I didn't need to teach them how to argue with me. They just did it. You want them to have this certain food. No, I don't want this. It's their favorite word growing up. No, that doesn't need to be taught. It's just within our system. But the people who that's what they grew up with, are these toxic behaviors, I think are much more prone to not knowing how to handle it. And on the other side, there are people that were taught it. They just find that when they behave a certain way, they get their sense of power. They get their sense of ego. They think this is what success is. They think this is what it is to achieve and to overcome and be machismo with it all. I think there is a fine line between using what you know and falling back to what you think works.
Speaking of being charged, I know throughout the course of your life you've struggled with anxiety, panic attacks, etc.
It's recent. It's been like the last 2 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know it exacerbated for you, I believe, right when you started your Instagram channel and things started to really pick up, right?
Yeah, when it started blowing up.
Where did that all come from, and how did you begin to diffuse it in a way where it wasn't bringing you down so much?
I'm one of these people, Doug, that I'm a thinker. I'm a internal processor. So I think a lot on things, whereas my wife talks all the time out loud. That's how she processes. I'm the opposite. And when social media was starting to take off, totally unknown to me, because this is not why I got into this space. I never had ever the goal still of gaining followers, or this is what I want to be. It just started happening. And that was overwhelming, in some sense terrifying, because this time last year, I might have had maybe 200,000 followers, which I thought was just absolutely bonkers. And then within a course of a week, I'd gained over a million. I was gaining over 100,000 followers a day, just randomly, about this time last year. And I didn't know what to do with that. The number just kept going. But I felt extremely exposed. That's what did it. I felt very alone and very exposed because I was not prepared for this. I did not expect this, and nobody in my life can relate to it. As much as my family, my best friends, they don't get it. It's not happening to them, and we don't see. I don't see a million people in a room all of a sudden, but they're there. So that just felt very alone. That night at the kitchen table, yeah, I mean, I'll blame it on The Rock. That's fine, but he'll take it. Like when I saw that he started following me, it was commenting on my stuff. It was like I kind of got dizzy for a second. Like what is happening? I make videos in my car. What are you talking about? And it was late at night at the kitchen table, and then that's when it just all of a sudden. The way I explain it is I felt like somebody just wafted a sheet of paper in front of me. Like I felt a cool breeze almost. And then all of a sudden my ears started thumping. I mean, you know it. And I had never felt that feeling before. I was convinced I was dying. Told my wife I was absolutely dying. And the way I've dealt with it is to recognize when it happens. It's a very familiar feeling. Like, when it's happening. Once you've had it once, and then breathing is the number one thing that helps for me. I started therapy for it, and I've worked through that. I did that for about 8 months, and breathing is the biggest thing that helped. I just felt alone. I didn't know anybody anywhere around me where they've called themselves an influencer, even though I don't even like that word. And I couldn't talk to anybody. Like, hey, what do you do? What do I do with this now? There's a lot of that.